Hi guys, Chaos here. Hope you all are doing fine. I just wanted to talk about people switching to Linux and why you should stay away from it if you have certain requirements, and maybe what you should do to get it run up and running. The state of gaming on Linux is good right now because every game that you really want to will work on Linux apart from the ones that require anti-cheats, like only certain anti-cheats that are blocked in Linux systems because developers don't want to enable those things. But 99% of the games out there will work in Linux. So I'm not here to talk about gaming entirely. I'm going to talk about what you should do before you think of switching to Linux. See, Linux is wonderful. So there are gaming focused distros, and then there are all around distros which you can choose from. Gaming focused distros like Bezite and then Zorin OS, where you have some of the dependencies pre-installed. And then there are distros like Linux Mint and everything where you can customize stuff, or you can go all out customization with Arch. So I have done my fair share with Linux Mint, Bezite, and some other distros as well, Ubuntu. The thing is that I always kept switching back to Windows. So I used to dual boot with Zorin OS, Mint, and Bezite as well. The problem always is that you need to know certain things before you switch to Linux. I had tried many distros, I watched a lot of walkthroughs, guides, and then I experimented on my own. And I found out the hard way that some of the softwares that I really wanted to use for my workflow on day-to-day basis doesn't work. So we all just don't use our PC for just gaming, right? So we use our system for many things like content consumption, content creation, office works, PDF works, or even personal AI-related work stuff. So all those things has to work with you for your workflow. Then only you can call it a perfect operating system, right? In Windows, everything works, but the problem is Microsoft really dunks on it. Like they break the systems, they make the drivers. Sometimes it literally lags your system out, and then the driver crashes happen. All those kinds of unoptimized shit happens in Windows. Those kind of things don't happen in Linux generally because it's all like open source and then less bloatware and shit. So it's kind of good. That in that sense, Linux makes sense. If you don't want any bloatware, if you don't want any AI bullshit, you can go ahead for Linux. But the thing is that there are many softwares that don't work with Linux. For example, you may have a keyboard. For example, I have a Corsair keyboard, and the Corsair keyboard doesn't have a driver for Linux. So I cannot control the RGB. So does my mouse. My Razer mouse doesn't work with Linux. I mean, it does work. I can use the mouse, but I cannot control the RGB. I have a Aorus X870 motherboard, and then I cannot control my motherboard lighting as well. So I can use tools like OpenRGB and then everything. But the thing is that with OpenRGB as well, Windows has drivers to make those softwares talk to each other. So you don't have to worry about all those things. So if you use OpenRGB in Windows, you can directly go ahead and change the lighting settings and everything. So for example, here is OpenRGB for me. For in OpenRGB, I can detect my RAM, my mouse, my motherboard, and my keyboard. So I can change all the settings over here as well. But in Linux, only some of these are detected. The thing is that my RAM doesn't get detected in Linux. The problem is the I2C driver. And the I2C driver doesn't work properly in Linux. You have to go ahead and do a lot of hoops and jump through a lot of holes, and then you have to fix all those things. And it doesn't always usually work out of the box like how Windows does. That people don't realize. So you might be interested to switch to Linux because it's privacy focused, it's lightweight and everything. But the thing is that once you go ahead and jump onto it, and then you see that some of the softwares that you don't work and you have to do a lot of tinkering to fix it, that's a frustration, right? It's usually pretty hard to get things working on Linux because the every time you hit a wall, you have to go to the internet, and then you have to search all those things, how to fix it, what are the codes to fix it, what I have to install, what are the dependencies that you have to install for it. A lot of things you have to go out of the way to get it working, right? So for example, this OpenRGB works on Linux as well as on Windows. But the problem is it doesn't detect all the devices because of the I2C drivers. It does not always detect, and it does not work with Linux well. It does not communicate well. And even the alternative, say if I'm going, for example, I have a display dimmer program which controls all my monitor brightness and everything. But this does not natively work on Linux. Again, I have to go for another kind of a software, and which is not as good and as polished as the one that is in Windows. You always have to have, what to say, it's a gamble. Sometimes you might get the same software which works perfectly, sometimes you don't get a software at all. And then you have to do all kinds of command line prompts to change it. It does not work. And Linux is bad with Power Toys. Say for me, I use certain buttons in my keyboard, and then I have Microsoft Power Toys, which allows me to switch the windows from one screen to another. I have a triple monitor setup, and then if I have a window open in one device, if I press G4 on my keyboard, it automatically switches to the next monitor and next and next. So all those kind of nifty features and shortcuts that I have in Windows as a power user in Windows, it does not work well with Linux. Again, that there may be hot corners, and then there will be softwares in Linux as well, but it does not work as well as it works on Windows. And for people who like tinkering with game settings, and then who like to monitor the performance metrics up top, like the way I'm doing right now in Spider-Man 2 with Steam. Say I can monitor the same thing on Linux as well. Say I can see the CPU temperature, I can see the GPU temperature, how much VRAM is getting used, and everything. But if I want to monitor the temperature control, if I want to see how much in what speed the fan is running at, and if I want to control all those things, again you hit a wall, because you do not have a natively supported software from the manufacturer to do all those things. Say MSI Afterburner doesn't, I mean, it's not there in Linux, and AMD Adrenaline is not there in Linux. Only the drivers are there, but not the software. For NVIDIA as well, the same thing. Now you have to go for softwares like Core Control, which allows you to manage temperatures and fan curves and everything. And again, this does not give you the full power that you have in Windows in Linux. You have to jump to you have to go to an inferior software which does not work well with the graphic card or whatever it is, and then you have to find a way to make it work. It's not as simple as installing the software and then set a fan curve, underworld the GPU and everything. You cannot underworld the GPU in Linux. I mean, you can, but you cannot do it simply. You cannot monitor how it's working. You cannot. It's not that easily accessible as it is in Windows. People don't realize that. They just want the gaming performance to be good. Yeah, see, Spider-Man 2 uses 14 GB of VRAM in Windows for me in Windows 11. That is the latest version that I have right now. But in Linux, it only used 12.2 GB. Yeah, that is a VRAM win. But FPS wise, it's almost the same, maybe 1 or 2% minus or plus, which doesn't really matter, but it's just 1 or 2 FPS. But the problem is, you lose a lot of control that you have with Windows. Even though Windows is shit and the AI slop is getting out of hand, it is the best that you can have right now if you want all the control that you want to have with your hardware that you have. So if I want to dedicate one application to a particular GPU, say if I want to use my iGPU for a particular application, I can do that easily on Windows. But on Linux, I have to jump through a lot of hoops again to get it working. And it may not work perfectly, and I cannot see if it's working perfectly or not. All those kind of things are just very messy with Linux. Even though I really want to switch to Linux entirely, it doesn't really help me. Say for my work, so I wanted to go for a gaming specific distro, because like Beside, because everything is pre-installed. The Wine dependencies, the Heroic launcher, and a Proton, everything is pre-installed, so you don't have to worry about it and you don't have to tinker it. You can just go ahead, install it, and then play. But the problem with Beside is it's an immutable system. So say, will you just use your PC for just gaming? If yes, then amazing, Beside will work for you. But again, you would want to control your RGB. It's not as easy because I2C is not supported well with Beside. And you cannot install any other softwares like easily. Flatpak versions you can, from the software center you can install. But if you want a niche software, say for my work, I need to access VMs from my office work. I need to access virtual machines. And for that, I cannot install the software because it doesn't exist for immutable systems. I mean, I can install it, but the keyboard doesn't work. I had to literally troubleshoot for 5 hours to get the software working, and even after that, it didn't work properly. And then I had to resort back to Windows for working and for virtualizations and everything. So it's like it's Linux is perfect for niche scenarios. Say if you want to just do gaming. You can do a dual boot and just do gaming on that. Yeah, it works well. But again, you have to give up a lot of storage space as well. See, if you're dual booting your system, then Windows takes up space and Linux takes up space, and you have to install softwares on both. So you have to get what is it, allocate space for both of them. And with the current storage prices right now, is that possible? People don't talk about this at all. And one main thing, in whenever you go and watch a video, no one says you have to change your file format system. See, Windows natively works with NTFS, so that's the file format system that Windows uses to read and write files. And that's how the storage devices are formatted. In Linux, when you install a Linux system on a different hard disk or maybe the same hard disk, it will run well. Even on NTFS, it will run. But the games, oh boy, the games will not run on NTFS. No one said that when I was switching to Linux. I mean, I had to literally tinker my way around it. So Linux doesn't support NTFS for gaming because Linux cannot read the files properly in a way. It can read the files that are stored in the hard disk, but it cannot run games out of it. You have to go and change the format to a Linux specified format, like XFAT32 or like something with B. It starts with B. I forgot right now. I cannot recollect while recording a video. That's embarrassing, but yeah. So you need to change the file format system and then only you will be able to run the games out of it. So I didn't know that. So I had to literally tinker around and then find out how I can make it work. And then when I switch the hard disk to that particular format, I cannot read that in Windows. Now I cannot use one hard disk in Windows. And that is unfortunately my NVMe, which I want to access in my Windows as well. So Spider-Man 2. So I installed in Linux. The file format system was formatted. Now I installed it. I was happy with the performance, and then I came back to Windows and I couldn't access the drive. I got super pissed. Now this is not the best of both worlds. That I may be wrong. So there could be ways you can access it, but unfortunately, it's not easily doable. It's not as user friendly as people make it out to be in the internet and in the YouTube. People install Bezite like anything and say that is the best OS ever for gaming. And people install Linux Mint and say it's the closest thing that you can get to Windows 11 and even Zorin OS. No, boss, it's not the closest thing that you can get to Windows 11. Windows 11 is really friendly with all the drivers and all the softwares, even though it is shit and breaks ton of things. You can debloat your Windows. Yeah, Windows does cause issues. Recently, there was an update where it was breaking all the game optimization issues, and the Microsoft literally asked you to uninstall it. So yeah, I had to do that shit as well. So those kind of things doesn't exist in Linux. And people who say and talk about privacy, yes, Linux is private in a way. But if you use VPN and if you disable telemetry on Windows 11 and then if you do all the precautions on Windows 11, if you are willing to do the tinkering on Linux, if you can do that on Windows itself, you can get a lot of privacy here as well, but not to the extent of Linux. But if you're willing to tinker for Linux, you can do some kind of a tinkering for Windows as well. You can uninstall all the bloatware. There are tools for it. There are scripts for it. You can uninstall OneDrive. You can uninstall Copilot. You can uninstall Edge. Yeah, you can't. I mean, if Windows is making you use Microsoft account and everything. You can sign in and then sign out and do everything. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. There are pros and cons to both sides, but there are more cons to Linux than pros. It does work for, say, if you're running LLMs out of your systems, and like I do. Even I use LLMs, and the tokens are, yeah, 2 or 3 seconds faster. But for 2 or 3 seconds faster, are you willing to sacrifice your ease of use? If yes, then all power to you. I wish Linux was easier as people make it out to be. No, it is not. Even though you might be a tech nerd in Windows, with Linux, you need to learn a lot of things. It's not as easy as switching OSs. With like, say, if you went from Windows 10 to 11, it's not as simple as that. Even Mac OS is very simple compared to Linux. Like, at least the main drivers and shit are supported, right? So that you don't have to worry about your primary things. What would you want from your system? You want your work things to work. You want your devices to be recognized. You want your RGB to be controlled. You want all your softwares to be working. You want to replace your Windows ecosystem with the Linux ecosystem, and it's not as easy as people make it out to be. And see the softwares that I use. This doesn't work well with Linux. WhatsApp doesn't exist in Linux. You have to go for the web version. That you have to keep in mind. And even though there is some kind of a performance hit with every app that requires a compatibility layer, even though people say there is no issues with the performance and everything, there are certain issues. And if you are a power user in Windows, like I am, like I set up a lot of shortcuts within my PC where like I have a Python script which literally opens up everything that I want in my PC and everything. Hey, I can do those things in Linux as well. But the thing is that the amount of time that you have to invest, that is what I want to want people with. I mean, I want to be people to be aware of. You need to invest a lot of time to get it up and running. It's not as easy as people make it out to be. You need to invest few days on it or maybe a week or two to get all your software up and running, to get all the eccentricities fixed. That you have to think about it. So guys, just before you switch to Linux, keep all this in mind. You need to remember about the Linux format system. Let me check out the Linux format system so that I can let you know. ext42, yeah, that's common, yeah. Hmm. So yeah, so Linux format system is important, and what I would suggest you to guys to do is dual boot. Even though it takes up space initially, you can dual boot, and then I would suggest you to dual boot, sit on the OS for a weekend, see how it works, get to know it, get to know how your OS works, how your all your workflows come together in Linux. You will only know what and all you are missing out and what and all you need once you switch. You might not remember the things that you need while you are about to switch. You might be so pissed with Microsoft today and maybe you are getting stutter issues on Windows, but in Linux it works well. Yeah, it does work well in Linux. Games do perform well. Even though you don't have entire control easily, or maybe you may not get the same kind of softwares that you get with Windows, the quality you might not get, but you do get more control over it in Windows. But in Linux you do get some kind of control, but it does work well and smooth. The Mesa drivers for AMD works very well with Windows. Even though I miss Adrenaline on Linux, the games perform so well. That is one godsend. But with Windows you can control a lot more things. See, if I want to control, let me open it up. Let me open up the Adrenaline software. I can show you what and all I can do with Adrenaline software that I cannot do with Windows. I cannot use FSR4 in Linux. I have a 9070 XT with paired with a 9010 X3D processor. FSR4 works with Adrenaline software alone because unless the game developer makes the FSR4 as a default, you cannot use FSR4 in Linux unless you use a software called OptiScaler, which doesn't work well with every game, and it might cause you bans, and it might cause bans in online multiplayer games. So these kind of controls, say I want to cap my FPS with Radeon Chill, I cannot do that in Linux. Again, I have to jump through a lot of hoops. It's not as easy as it is in Windows. Radeon Chill is a useful feature because high frame rate gaming can cause stutters. So if you can cap your FPS to 120, it will work well. Radeon anti-lag doesn't work well with every game. Frame generation works, but it's FSR3. Again, you're missing out on FSR4, which is way good and way ahead than FSR3. FSR3 is shit. I will never use it. FSR4 is good. People should be using it. That doesn't work with Linux again. Right now, I'm talking about the current scenario, current situation. People may say FSR4 will come to Linux eventually. Yes, but is it now? We are talking about now. Should you switch now? That you should be aware of. That is what is important. Yeah. So all these controls that you get with Windows, you do not get it with Linux. You can monitor all these stuff here. How much VRAM am I using? How much my CPU temperature is? All these things are very easy with Windows. and even fan controls. Let me show you. See, I can easily use fan control to control my fan curves and shit. But in Linux, unfortunately, GPU driver is easily detectable. GPU temperature sensor I can manage. But the CPU, you need I2C driver. The I2C driver doesn't get easily detected in Linux. Even though you install all the dependencies, it doesn't work always. Certain motherboards are not supported, certain brands don't support it, certain brands don't support it in Linux. So many issues, man, so many issues. So before you consider switching to Linux, I am an advocate of Linux, but the thing is that these things people should be aware of. People don't talk about the problems after switching to Linux. These are the problems you should be aware of, which you should fix beforehand. Do a dual boot. This is how you should install Linux. Do a dual boot. Install the distro that you want. Maybe it could be a gaming focused distro, maybe it could be an all-rounder distro like Mint or Zorin OS, or you can go for gaming focus like Beside. Install it, feel the OS, see what all works for you, what all applications are working for you. If all the required browsers that you use are working, all the applications that you use are working, all the drivers that you need are working properly, all the controllers, RGB controllers, your accessories, devices, do they work well with Linux? Do the experiment. If it doesn't work, Google it. Use ChatGPT or whatever AI that you want to use. See if you can find a fix. You will have headaches initially to get it up and running. Do it. Make sure everything works and see if it's all worth it. It is worth it if you want privacy focused ones. It does work well if you can get all your workflow in order in Linux. It'll be peaceful, it'll be lightweight, it'll be nice. See if it works for you. See if you can use all the softwares that you need. And if you're using LLMs and shit, tokens will be a little bit faster. And people who are using Docker containers and they're running their own what to say, home Plex server and everything, you can do that with Windows as well. You don't have to switch to Linux. There is Docker, and there is everything that you can do all those things in Linux, Windows as well. But in Linux also it works well because there is also Windows subsystem for Linux. Even Microsoft understands Linux is important. So things can work well with Windows 11 also if you can tinker around and make all the necessary changes, and it will work well. But if you're switching to Linux, think about it. Go ahead, try it out. If it works for you, amazing. You will have a good time. Updates don't break your system. That's a godsend. But if you want all the ease of use and comfort that you have with Windows, you can go ahead and then try to fix Windows as well. There are scripts, there are tools that you can use to debloat Windows. See if your VPN works with Windows. Sorry, in Linux. You can check all the softwares, make a list of it, what all should work, what all software that you need to use in your day-to-day basis, what all work softwares that you use, what all editing softwares that you use. Does it work well with Linux or does it work through a translation layer? Check everything and then switch. Don't switch directly by removing Windows. That's a mistake. Do a dual boot, test it around, make sure everything works, and then you decide. Yeah, guys, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to give a heads up and then make you guys do an informed decision so that you guys can enjoy your gaming PC or your work PC or whatever. Be aware of all the issues. That's really what I wanted to highlight. Thank you, guys.